Hello and welcome back. We're starting in Spark mode again to give anyone who has not watched Season 2 of The Mandalorian one last opportunity to exit the video before we get into any spoiler discussion. My name is Rich and let's get started.
I'll never make Jedi Knight like this.
Okay, patience, Snips, patience, as Anakin would say. But first, a quick housekeeping item. In my last video, I demonstrated how I recreated the main gate entrance into Calodan. As I discussed in that video, I've made a slight cosmetic change to the foot of each of the wall outcroppings, as I'll show here. In my original design, I used these ramp blocks at the foot of each of the wall outcroppings, and when connected to the path, it fit in like this. I changed to the long wedge block just because I think it looks better, and it connects to the path in the exact same way. I've done that here at the main gate entrance, at the wall outcroppings at the far ends of the wall, as well as the wall outcroppings on the town side of the wall. I used this screenshot as inspiration for creating the town with its narrow stone path leading to the magistrate's residence, its tightly compacted buildings, dwellings, and structures. I attempted to create rooftops that mimic the patchwork roofs that we can see in this clip, and used plenty of decorations, particularly from the kiln set, for the various types of hardware we see around the buildings. For the main path, I used the racetrack, the basic racetrack piece for the outside here, and for the theme, set that to pirates, which I'll show here. There it is, the pirates theme. We'll select that. And then on the other side of the wall, we use 3 more racetrack pieces, the very long racetrack. So we have 3 of those. That takes us to the wall entrance to the magistrate's residence. Along the sides of the path, I put these terrain blends. And the theme for that chose the Dusty Crop Hopper's runway. And those terrain blends go along either side of the path. And I used it at the end of the path here, entering into the forest. For our terrain blocks below the town here, just like the forest, we're using our large flat terrain blocks. And for the theme, I used buried treasures. That's the one that I thought looked the best, but there are several other good choices that you can select from. Just like the forest, we go 3 across with the large terrain blocks, and then I went 4 deep for the magistrate's residence and the rest of the town and the industrial complex. That repeats on both sides. As for how I did it inside the magistrate's office, I'll demonstrate that in the next video. Notice that the wall lines up right on the edge of these 2 terrain blocks. That's so you can have a good change in, a consistent change in color from the forest to the town. For the main road, I chose the Tatooine buildings, mostly because of the doors. I wanted these buildings to look most like Star Wars with the proper types of doors, but it did give me a problem with the roofs, which I'll demonstrate here shortly. So I used these various Tatooine building bees, set them to turn them around so they'd have different orientations. So it wasn't quite always consistent. And I used a number of them on either side of the main path here. I also used this building A, this large one. I only used it once. Had to create 2 different roofs for it. And I used these building C's as well. Also changing the orientation just to make them look a little bit different. You see you have 2 here side by side, but oriented differently. Same on this side of the road. The other architectural styles I used, well, I guess also from the Tatooine, I guess I'm going to do that first. Use this Mos Espa antenna. There was a lot of antennas around the building, so I used those Mos Espa antennas throughout the town. I also used these Tatooine walls, particularly for this particular building here. I thought it looked rather interesting and created a bit of a courtyard. And I repeated a similar build on the other side. There we go. For our other architectural styles, I used the large Fantasyland buildings from Group 4. And I used various buildings here and put them in different orientations and positions just to mix it up. Make them look a little bit different. I also went into the Pirates drawer and chose some building selections from there in Group 4. And oriented them in different ways, again, just to mix it up and so it's not all quite looking the same. Use the tall building bases here. I like the arches as well. Added a little bit of interesting building techniques for the level. Keep it interesting for the players. I also used the Agrabah set, particularly the small Agrabah citadels, the Agrabah citadel and the square Agrabah citadels. And once again, I made sure to mix up how I combine them and change their orientation. My rooftops, these pirate roofs, give a good patchwork thatch type of look for the town. I use a variety of these, including these roof wedge corners. Once again, I tried to mix it up and not be too consistent. I used these long roofs, and even in a few locations I used the shorter, just regular roof pieces. I also used basic blocks set to the tin roof theme, which I thought was another good match for those patchwork thatched looking roofs on the buildings. And that's way across the style drawer here. Right next to the water. So I thought that was a good match. I tried to mix up the blocks I used. Used some different ones like this dip beam because the roofs were rather imperfect. Had a lot of patchwork, holes. So I didn't want my roofs to look perfect. I even used a vaulted platform over here on the large building. I used a triangular pyramid block. I was just going with whatever I thought looked good. Even if it didn't really match the buildings, I was just trying to mix it up and make them look different, as well as make them kind of look old and worn out. I used a number of these rounded ledge blocks in several locations. Once again, over here at the top of the two-story building, the ledge blocks. I even position them down using the path tool. And that's how I connected the basic blocks to these Tatooine buildings to create a roof. Turned the property off, and then I drew a path straight down through the middle. And every one of those blocks is connected to those paths with their properties adjusted for vertical height, forward and backward position, as well as horizontal position. So just taking a look at one of these ramp blocks here that I used as a roof piece. So you can see how I adjusted forward, backward, vertical, and horizontal offset to get them into position. It just takes some experimentation. Once you kind of get an idea of what you're doing, you can see the pattern, and it gets a little bit easier to do that. But I only did that for the main road. I didn't do it for the rest of the buildings. Using our locking gate cages here for our 2 prison cells. Used a number of pieces from building set 7 from the Force Awakens set. These storage tanks, I like these droid repair stations. They look cool. They have a little bit of a sound that they emit when you get up close to them, and I kind of like that as well. This is the same cover over the main gate that we're using for the entrance to the magistrate's office, or residence, I should say. I assume her office is inside the residence. We also use these Jakku outposts. I have a number of them scattered along the edges. I tried to put those type of buildings more along the edges. They seem to fit well along the wall and make it a little less boring by having something along the wall. We use these fantasy terrain number 2s set to the Tatooine theme. I have a number of those located around. There's another Jakku outpost. There's another fantasy terrain 2. Just kind of going around the edges here, showing how I scattered some of the stuff around. Have more of the Jakku storage tanks and a Jakku droid factory. And this is what I was looking for. I also used a number of these Jakku freighter containment crates scattered around the town. For the different types of pipes and hardware laying around the buildings, I found the kiln decorations to be quite handy. So I used a lot of these, the kiln barriers. You can see one there. What's really cool about these kiln decorations is they have the little red blinking lights on them. And I think that's kind of cool when you're running around and you see the red lights flashing. I use these kiln machine posts in several locations. For the lampposts, the Halloween Town street lamps are a good match for the lampposts that you see in the episode, particularly along the main path here, but you also see more scattered around the interior parts of the town as the various fight sequences are occurring. So for the main gate entrance to the magistrate's residence, we have a double door. So I've moved my two trigger areas out of the way, and this automatic double door is a really good match for the double doors that you see entering the magistrate's residence. So this first one has logic set to it, which will put it in a naturally locked position, and that's connected to the trigger area on the left. This one has no logic, meaning it's free to open and close. I was only concerned about locking the player out of the outer door to prevent them from entering the magistrate's residence until all the enemies were defeated in town. Once again, using basic blocks here to create the wall around the magistrate's office set to the castle brick theme. He's showing some of the various 1x1 blocks, 1x3 vertical blocks, as well as these wedge blocks to create these corners. This is the trigger area that, when it's active, will tell the player that they can't enter this area until the enemies are defeated. And that's the trigger area that unlocks the outer door. Allows it to open and close. And our Jakku outpost archway as our cover over the main entrance there to the residence. Now there were some saucer-shaped structures on either side of the gate here. I used quite a bit of artistic license here. I went with these droid factory pieces, the Mos Espa antennas on top, and then I used these round basic blocks, 2 of them, stacked upon each other, and the ramp blocks. And I used the Tatooine brown metal. I like the way that looked. And then you notice I have 4 paths here. All of the paths are turned off, and that's to make the ramp blocks, the foot pieces, fit into the round block. I thought it gave it a particularly interesting look, the way the pieces combine together. And that's what we're looking at here. It's some interesting geometric shapes. That's what the path tool can do for you when you start combining the basic blocks. And I did that on either side of the entrance there. I used a lot of these kiln braziers scattered around. What I like about them is when you get in range of them, they'll light up, give you a little extra light. I also use these kiln engines. So a lot of kiln decorations, and you can see them there in the background, how many I used. So this is just showing as you get close to these kiln braziers, how they light up. They also look cool. That's why I used them as well. I feel like the game should be fun to play, but also have a lot of cool visual effects as well. I also a number of times use these Agrabah doorway columns. Help define narrow corridors between the buildings. I use a number there, I use a number here as part of this building structure with a flat tin roof. Just showing the different Agrabah buildings that I use there and how I combine them just to mix things up. And how I use the Pirates buildings here, change the orientation, different sizes. Some buildings are bigger than others. Here I combined the Pirates with the Agrabah buildings to create some interesting shapes, little corners and hiding spots. And here's some more of these Agrabah columns. I really like those columns. I think they just look cool. Alright, so here we are back in our central stone path between the main gate and the magistrate's residence. In my next video will be my final build video for the toy box level. I'll discuss how I created the magistrate's residence, as well as the background scenery and the industrial complex. Once again, I hope you've enjoyed the video. I'd like to once again wish everyone happy holidays. Remain safe, be well, and we'll see you next time.